Let's start with a little story about an engineer named Jim. Jim's got cavitation on a pump. This is a pump that's controlled by PLCs, and the PLCs don't really have any kind of historian associated with them. I suppose he can go to the strip charts, try to figure out, why they're losing money because of all the repairs that are being done on this pump. But what he'd like is something that's a little more scalable, something that's easier to use, he can use from different locations, etc., etc. So what he'd like to do is put in a Pi server. Now on this Pi server, he's going to install the OPC interface, or with the Pi server, he'll install a second computer with an OPC interface that's going to read data from an OPC server that he's going to have the vendor of this PLC install. Now typically the first step in installing Pi is determining what kind of an architecture you're going to have. So, are you going to have one Pi server or multiple Pi servers so that you can do high availability? Are you going to have everything on one computer or a separate computer for the interfaces, etc.? And what we suggest is you talk to, first and foremost, your sales representative from OSI. These folks are, that's their mandate to make sure you get these answers. And also we will probably be talking or wanting to talk to some folks in IT about your specific network infrastructure within IT. Also, sometimes we have tech support get involved in those kinds of things, as well as some of the other groups within OSI. So one way or another, we want to start with a decent architecture. Now, in addition to that, let's also discuss the, some of the, what type of machine we would suggest you go out and buy. Typically, what we're going to see is people buying a name brand type server class machine. So it doesn't take much, and we've actually got some system sizing spreadsheets to help you decide. But typically what we would see is on an average size Windows server, you're going to be able to do a moderately sized Pi system. And you'll find some resources in tech support like the ones listed here if you want to know more about system sizing. So now some other things that we suggest along with getting decent equipment is to make sure that you install when you install your operating system, create an Ntfs partition. That actually does some things that we can take advantage of with regard to security. Also, we do suggest that you exclude any of the Pi or the PyPC directories from any of your virus scanning software. So Pi is constantly writing to disk, and sometimes it can write things that might be interpreted as a false flag within virus scanning. So watch out for that. Also, we do suggest you disable this Ntfs file compression. Now, the Pi system is a very memory intensive application, so we do suggest that you get as much memory as you can. There is no hard and fast rule, but we give you some estimates based on that system sizing table that you'll find on that spreadsheet. Now, some other things you're going to need a Windows account that's got privileges. Now, this account's going to need to be able to do things like install and run system services, modify the registry, create directories, copy files, etc. So it doesn't have to be the admin account, although a lot of times people do use the administrator account. But whatever you do use, we do suggest you use that same account for all installations of the Pi server. So just a good rule of thumb to use that same account. Now the server clock is very important because Pi's working with real-time data, and real-time data is pretty finicky when it comes to things like time zone and daylight saving time. We've got some pretty amazing horror stories of folks that the guy that picks his computer up in New York, takes it back to Singapore, sets it up, sets the time correctly, but doesn't change the time zone. So picture this now. You've got a computer that's sitting in Singapore, but the computer thinks it's sitting in New York. And because Pi saves everything as universal coordinated time, the so-called Greenwich Standard Time, that's not going to work out very well. So very, very important. Make sure you set your server clock properly. Make sure you set the time zone properly. Now finally, you're going to need a license file in order to install. And you're going to have to get that license file either from tech support if you can't do it yourself, or we do have nice utilities to let you do it. Now you'll find more information about this in the class workbook. I'm going to go ahead and just demonstrate as best I can what it's like working with that, getting that file that you're going to need. So I'm going to switch over now to our tech support website, and on our tech support website there's an option here called, within My Support, called My License Activations. Now this is assuming now you've logged in using your regular technical support credentials. And if you should see a list of the products that you're licensed for. Go ahead and choose the Pi server, and you click on this Generate, and there's a procedure you'll find here that will allow you to create for yourself the license file that you're going to need to do the installation. What this is going to do is basically just verify that you're using the server that's associated with the copy of the Pi system that you're going to be using. So there's a couple of things we do first. First of all, just double check to make sure that you've got the right server in mind here. Here's some of the details of your server. So just click on that, double check that you're working with the right server. Once that looks good, go ahead and download this machine signature file. It's a little utility that if you click here, you'll download it. You're going to have to move that file over to your Pi server. So if your Pi server is not on the web, and a lot of them aren't because of security, then move that over. Now I'm actually going to do this here by, I'm going to copy this generator utility over to a virtual machine that's working within this particular host machine. So as I close this, I'll now open up a different computer. And you're going to see this all throughout this class. I'm going to be working on this different computer, which is a virtual machine on this host. So here's that generator file. It's in a zip file. It extracts into an executable. What you're going to do is run this, but you run this, be sure to run this on the Pi server, on the machine that you've used when you purchased the license for the Pi server, the one you specified as the Pi server. I'll go ahead and double click on this to run this. This is giving me an option, where do I want to put this? Now that's not going to be the name of the file. No, the name of the file is going to be the name of the server. So in this case, my server is called OSIsoft-trng, and we generate that file. Here is that file. That's actually a file that you're going to copy back from this Pi server over into the machine, some machine that's got a web connection, or if your Pi server's got a web connection, you can do it from there. But you need to go to a computer that's got a web connection, put that file there. Let me go ahead and show you where I've placed this in my computer here. I'm back on my host computer now, and I've copied that file that was just generated on the Pi server to this little temporary directory, my Pi things, where I'm just storing things for the purpose of the class. Now, you can then at this point go ahead and pick up the procedure. The procedure is back on the tech support website. Now that you know the location of that file, go ahead and browse for that, and you're going to do a license activation. So let me go ahead and browse for that file. There it is. Now that's as far as I can get to demonstrate this. If I go ahead and choose to generate this activation file, it's actually going to fail. In this case, it's going to fail because I've got the an internal only license here. So I can't really demonstrate this, but what's going to happen is it's going to generate a zip file. That zip file is going to contain a license.dat, a Pi license.dat, and among other things, instructions, etc. And that Pi license.dat is what you're going to make use of when you do the install. So if I go back to my virtual machine now, so I'm going to use this along with that website to generate that zip file that contains the Pi license.dat. And then when I go ahead and actually do my installation, during the installation, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have to specify where that license.dat file is. I think in this case I just put it in a local directory on the Pi server, Pi license.dat. Remember, Pi's not installed on this machine yet. I'm going to be installing Pi from this set of setup screens here, setup files here. So during that setup, you're going to be asked to provide that license.dat, and that's how you go about getting that license.dat file. Okay, now one more point. Maybe this is belaboring the obvious, but let me go back to my set of instructions. I want to show you how to learn more information about this if you do have problems. Let me just go back into, this is the tech support site. I'm going to go back into this search at the top, I just followed the procedure here, and I said that this is going to create a zip file, and it's the zip file that contains the license file, right? If you go in here and just take a look for, or do a search for license file, you'll find one of these our KB articles that describes in great detail exactly what the process is and what kind of files are going to be generated. As you can see in that zip file, it's going to give you this pylicense.dat along with some instructions, etc. So that's how you go about preparing to do your installation.